Oklahoma State Bill 593 is a major threat to our freedom to read, and I'm about to break down why it matters no matter what genre you read or where you live. We all know that book banning is on the rise, with many LGBTQIA+, BIPOC, and books depicting sexually explicit content coming up against challenges for years. This has become such a problem that Donnelly Public Library in Idaho has become an 18-plus building where the patrons have to sign a waiver that says that their children will not enter the building unless accompanied by an adult, and to grant permission for their children to participate in after-school programs. So aside from censoring information, these bills also have an impact on third places that these communities desperately need. The success of these bills has caused Oklahoma to go one step further by introducing State Bill 593. A bill that on its face expands the criminalization of child sexual abuse to include AI-generated media. And this is something I think no one has a problem with. But it's the second portion of this bill that bans unlawful porn that has vast implications not just for romance readers in Oklahoma, but for all book lovers in the USA. Before you just accuse me of fear-mongering, let me explain. Because I read this bill in its entirety, and I really stopped to think about the potential long-term consequences of a bill like this. The bill first describes unlawful porn as any visual depiction or individual image stored or contained in any format on any medium. Now, I know what you're gonna say.
But Stephanie, books aren't on this list. This only talks about visual media.
You're right. And by the strictest definition of the term visual media, this would only apply to visual elements of the book, such as typography, layout, and illustrations. However, we do have historical context that the US has included print media in this list in the past in the US Code Title 18, Section 2256. And I'm going to look at my notes for this next part, just so I don't get it wrong. When Statute 98-292 replaced the term visual or print medium for organization. So there is a historical precedent that includes books. And they've built a nice little nest in their list with the language in any format on any medium, including but not limited to, where fan fictions and books can just easily be set right in there. Also, later in the bill, it describes porn trafficking as the production, sale, distribution, transportation, or dissemination of pornography through any medium, including physical or electronic means, for financial or material gain or with intent to exploit. So again, this any medium here does in fact include books with open-door content. And in case you still had any doubts about whether they were planning to include books, there's this section, which states, "No person shall knowingly publish, offer to publish, or otherwise distribute, display, or exhibit any book, magazine, story, etc., or other article which is unlawful pornography." The bill then goes on to list what acts would be considered unlawful porn. And the first item on that list is just sex. Any sex. So, bye-bye fourth wing. Then, as I read the list, I realized that I could think of a title or fan fiction that fit every single one of these items. I've even written some of them in my own fanfic. Now, it does have a clause about protected speech and following the US and state constitutions, so it does have that going for it. But when has the First Amendment, which does protect the rights of students and others to be able to access information contained in books, ever stopped someone from contesting a book? And considering that the US Constitution has been removed from the whitehouse.org website, and that my US Senator told his constituents when they went to him with concerns over what was happening over at the Treasury this past week, when he said, even though Elon Musk's actions are technically unconstitutional, nobody should bellyache about that. I don't really have a lot of faith that the people in charge of our government right now actually care about the Constitution. Another clause that can be very easily tied into books and fan fiction is depictions of sexual conduct and have as their dominant theme an appeal to prurient interest in sex, may not be produced or distributed within the state if they lack serious literary, artistic, educational, political, or scientific purposes or value.
But Stephanie, books are literature.
Yes, They are. But how many people have you had the debate with that romance books don't count as literature?
But Stephanie, prurient means an excessive interest in sexual matters, like corn addiction. I'm not addicted to corn, so I'll be fine.
Might I point back to that first line item on what they consider as unlawful corn that says that any sexual content is considered unlawful corn? This law states that essentially any interest in intercourse is prurient, which I can only say, I feel so sorry for this man's wife. So who can be found guilty of having unlawful porn? So according to this bill, it's anyone who produces this content, so authors and publishers, distributors, so booksellers, librarians, and online archives like AO3, and anyone who aids them, like me, a book content creator. Oh, and anyone who engages with the content, the readers. The punishment? A felony of up to 10 years in prison and a fine of up to $100,000 for each occurrence. How many open door romances do you have on your bookshelves, or saved on your computer, or bookmarked on AO3? And if you mail someone a book, you can be tried in the county where it was deposited, delivered, or received. This charge comes with a misdemeanor with up to 1 year in jail and a fine of $2,000. And the most ridiculous part of all, after all of this section shall not be construed to prevent spouses from sending images of sexual nature to each other. So, books that promote a healthy, consensual attitude toward sex? Bad, and you deserve to rot in prison for reading them. Pics? Good. Also, send nudes. What dystopian hell are we living in?
But Stephanie, I don't live in Oklahoma. This doesn't affect me unless I mail a book to Oklahoma.
For that, you need to understand test cases. I'll let Parkrose Permaculture explain that because she put it very well in this video.
They use cases like this in conservative states to set a precedent and do kind of like a trial run for how to roll out their programs nationwide.
Oklahoma's dominant political ideology is 51% Christian nationalist, who place their hierarchies of values as God, nation, and the traditional family. They typically support religious freedoms, but only for Christians, biblical law, integration of church and state, economic and political conservatism, and are opposed to any secular or progressive movements. Their job as evangelicals is to convert you to their version of Christianity, whether you want to or not, which is why they actively preach against empathy.
So I want to preach a message today titled, When Empathy Becomes Sin.
Because if you empathize with people who have different values than you may drift away from the purpose. And a key part of their plan is to take over our government one seat at a time. I don't know about you, but the more I see what's going on in Oklahoma, the more I'm positive that I do not want to live in a Christian nationalist state. Do you?
But Stephanie, I don't even read romance. This doesn't affect me.
Again, you need to care about the legal precedents that a bill like this sets. Do you like sci-fi? This book is built on atheist principles. Gone. Fantasy, witchcraft and polytheism, blasphemy. Horror, obscene violence, banned. Mystery, promotes murder, jail. Historical fiction, we can't have them reading about history and realizing who we are and how to beat us. Burn it! See what I'm getting at here? Reading introduces readers to new ideas and concepts, and Christian nationalists don't want any ideas to thrive that aren't their own. So what can you do against odds that seem insurmountable? Nothing certainly isn't the answer. I do not care if you are left, right, or center. If you care about your constitutional rights, we have to show these people that we will not allow them to violate the Constitution, because there are a lot more of us than there are of them, and they are afraid of that. They are counting on our passivity to let laws like this pass. First, you need to take care of yourself. You need to do whatever you can to recharge your battery, because nothing about what we are facing in our country today is normal. You need to spend time, whether through video call or in person, with the people that you care about. Not just your nuclear family, but your community of people. In my experience, that always recharges some of my faith in humanity. If you are in Oklahoma, you need to call or visit, don't write or email, they're just gonna get rid of it, your state representatives before this bill hits the floor for voting. I'll link resources on how to look up your representatives down below. When you do not talk about the social issues around this bill. They do not care. You need to frame it in how bad this bill will be for the economy. You also need to talk to them with respect so they don't get defensive. For example, my name is Stephanie. I live in insert zip code here, and I am your constituent. While I support adding AI-generated content into our definition of child sexual abuse, I am greatly concerned about the economic impact of State Bill 593. I worry that this bill will deter future film and television projects in our state, something that would greatly impact local economies and employment. I also worry about the extra legal and enforcement costs associated with enforcing a bill like this. This bill could also drive away digital business investments in our state due to the increased compliance costs. And I think we will see a dramatic increase in costly state litigation when legal challenges based around First Amendment rights hit our courts. Please oppose this bill. Thank you. If any one of the points that I just made would affect you personally, make sure to include that. But you need to expect that they will say something similar to what my state senator told us. Because remember, empathy is against their religion. The goal isn't to change their mind about the bill itself. The goal is to show up in such great numbers that they will think that in order to win their war, they have to stay in power. And to stay in power, they may have to lose this battle. Talk to your local librarian on how they're planning to handle this bill. You may want to talk to a few. Join an anti-book banning group. Keep them apprised of the situation. I'll link some organizations down below. If you don't live in Oklahoma, you can still join an anti-ban group. Monitor what's going on in your own state. Look into how your local libraries handle book contestations. If there's a public meeting that involves a contested book, attend and speak up. I understand that we don't have the bandwidth to fight every battle that is thrown at us. I certainly don't. Book banning may not be the issue for you. That's okay. Pick one or two causes that you care about and follow those issues. Take action on those issues. If you have the bandwidth to take action on other issues as they come up, then do so. But prioritize your two issues and your self-care. My issues are book banning and voter suppression. What are yours? Lastly, you have to keep hope. We cannot let nihilism defeat us. Books take us into worlds filled with dreams and possibilities. It is possible to have a better future, a future where we can build the infrastructure to weather climate change, where all Americans can have access to food, shelter, education, and healthcare, where we value and protect the working class and not just the rich. The ideas to do this exist. They are possible. You cannot give up. Let's see what stories tomorrow brings.